I want to introduce you to my next guest, who is one of the best governors in the country. You know, I'm biased for my own governor, but inarguably one of the greatest governors in the country, who a friend of mine actually refers to because of his fight with Disney as the Rat Slayer, has been incredible. I hate to use the word holistically. It's just such one of those buzzy words, but I mean, balancing his state, which has a massive environmental concern that everybody left, right, and center cares about, from the Everglades to the freshwater springs to bringing in massive amounts of business, handling just this massive influx of people from all of these states they're fleeing, and then also having to deal with like Hurricane Debbie and then the inevitable Florida man. And he balances it all with grace and humor and is just such a great governor. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Governor Ron DeSantis. Thanks so much.
You know, it's great to be back in Georgia, and all the accolades of Florida I'm proud of, but I grew up in Florida, born and raised, and we were for a long number of years the college football center of the universe.
Yes, about
that. That is not true anymore. I am now standing in the college football center of the universe in the state of Georgia. And, you know, these things change. But so as a conservative, you know, I understand my job is just as much to prevent bad ideas from going into place as it is to facilitate good. You want to do both, but you got to stop the bad stuff. So a couple years ago, I had some people come to me with an idea, and they said, Governor, we have calculated that we could make more money for the University of Florida if we moved the Florida-Georgia game from Jacksonville to a home-and-home series. And I said, you know, that very well may be true, but I am not going to be the governor that loses the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Denied.
You know, I would be remiss, since you started there, that y'all are losing such a great president at the University of Florida with former Senator Sass. That was a great pick, and just what you've done with colleges in Florida overall has been just tremendous to actually push back on so many of the far left academic issues that where college campuses around the country have just been tools of indoctrination and just forget about education.
So we have a radical idea that the tax dollars that Floridians pay should not go to fund universities that are hostile to our freedoms and way of life, and that they should actually fund institutions that are pursuing the classical mission of a university, pursuing truth, having high academic standards, and preparing our students to be citizens of our republic. And so what we've been able to do, so first of all, since I've been governor, we've not raised tuition. So tuition for in-state's about $6,300. Grandparents can actually qualify for in-state on behalf of their grandkids under certain circumstances. We're proud of that. We have Bright Future scholarships, similar to what Georgia has, where you good students go to school for free. You run notch below that, you get 75% off tuition. So we're making it affordable. So you basically have no debt. But what we've said is, how does it get to where these universities are captured by the left? You can't just say we don't want it. There's reasons why. There's incentives built in. So we did a reform that all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. So you're now seeing, and this isn't even apart from the indoctrination nonsense. You talk to anyone in those universities, probably the biggest deadweight cost is unproductive tenured faculty. So you want to be able to do this, but it also helps identify, hey, if you're there for politicking and not for academic rigor, we're going to do that. So we did that. That's now being done. There was just an article about UF that Ben Sass really did this to identify. So they've got like the bottom 20% that are going to be filtered out, but we have also empowered presidents of our universities, almost like free agency. There's someone good at Hillsdale or MIT, we give you a pot of money, just go hire them. Do not let the hiring be held captive by the current faculty. Why? Well, because if you're under current in almost any university in this country, if you go in front of that faculty, if you don't toe the ideological line, are you going to get tenure? Probably not. In fact, I'd say 95% not. Well, now we don't have to worry about that. They see people that are talented, they bring them in. So we've brought in a lot of professors for our universities. And it's funny because like we have this post-tenure review. People are being processed out. Some people have looked at what we've done at like New College in Sarasota. This was like a small liberal arts college, publicly funded. I didn't even know what it was when I became governor. I remember the Speaker of the House came to me, said, Governor, I want to talk to you about New College. I was like, why do we need a new college? We have enough of them already. He's like, no, this place in Sarasota. I'm like, well, you tell me about it. It was like a Marxist commune, like left of the left, no grades, all this stuff. And like, look, if that's what you want to pursue, you have every right to do that, but not at the taxpayer's expense. So I put 7 conservatives on the board of trustees. So I put 7 conservatives on the board of trustees. They fired the president, hired a conservative president. They abolished the gender studies department. They were the first university in America to eliminate DE&I, and they reframed the mission of the college to be the nation's top publicly funded classical liberal arts college, similar to like a Hillsdale College. And so when we did that, there were some, even though the enrollment was terrible, some of the students wanted to leave, but so many more wanted to apply. Some of the faculty wanted to leave, and honestly, they should have. They were not good fits from there. And so the media would be like, oh, there's a brain drain because some professors are leaving. Let me tell you, if Marxist professors are leaving the state of Florida, that is good for the state of Florida. That is not bad. But just the larger issue, though, is conservatives have worked hard on K-12. We have universal school choice. Hopefully Georgia will get there someday, some of these other states. But it's good. It's important. But you can be, and I have young, so we are, and I was just telling Erick before we came out here, you know, we're in the last dog days of summer vacation. Next week, we have our daughter going to 2nd grade, our son going to 1st, and our youngest daughter going to pre-K4. We're ready for them to get back to school. They are. But, so we're very sensitive to K-12. It's important, but just think about it. You're a parent. Maybe you have a great K-12 school. Maybe you're homeschooling. You're working hard to instill values. You do that for 18 years, and then your kids go to some university where they work to undo that with indoctrination. That is not good. So I think this higher education issue is critical. We are now, because of what's happened at Columbia and all this other stuff, you know, they tried to take over lawns at University of Florida, Florida State, all this stuff. They lasted 7 minutes and they got dragged out of there. We're not putting up with this stuff. But part of the problem with our country and things that have gone wrong is as a result of all the nonsense that you've seen of these universities of the last 20, 25 years. You know, I was a blue-collar kid growing up in Florida. I was a baseball player, you know, so I ended up getting recruited to play baseball by schools like Princeton and Yale, and I had never been to New England before in my life. I remember showing up the first day of school like a good Floridian. I have flip-flops and jean shorts on and a T-shirt. That is not how these kids from the prep schools dressed or acted, so I was like a fish out of water. I didn't even know colleges were liberal when I went. I just was very, very wet. But I always said, it was shocking to me, and it's much worse now, but I was like, you know, when these kids get into the real world, none of this stuff is going to fly. Like, this doesn't work. Well, now looking back, you know, the joke's been on me because, like, all of that, yeah, it didn't happen right away, but it's now permeated corporate America, the bureaucracy, all these different things. So if we do not have a counter with higher education, we are ultimately going to lose, I think, a lot of the battles that lie ahead of us. And I'm just proud in Florida, no state has done more to reclaim the historic traditional mission of higher education than the state of Florida. We do not cede those institutions to the political left in the Sunshine State.
Well, and also I do have to say on the football comment, it looks like the University of Florida is becoming a great baseball school.
Well, so we had Florida State and Florida, both Florida's UF 2023 number 2 in the nation. They lost to LSU, who had Paul Skeens, who's one of the best pitchers in the big leagues already. And then this year, Florida and Florida State both made it to the Final Four. Baseball, neither of them made it to the championship. And University of Florida had a first-round pick. Florida State had 2 first-round picks. You know, I'm a baseball guy. I played all the way through college, so that's my love. But at the same time, I remember my first year as governor, when National Signing Day happened for the football recruits, I told my staff, give me letters for all the kids. I'm going to sign them letters saying congratulations. So they did. And we have a lot of great high school football in Florida, great talent. So I'm signing these letters, and I'm reading, Dear Johnny, congratulations on signing with the University of Georgia. Dear Michael, congratulations on signing with Alabama. Dear Johnny, congratulations on signing with Clemson. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I congratulating them for leaving the state of Florida? We used to keep all the blue chips in state now. So yeah, but we've got our state in terms of like big events. Just since I've been governor, we've hosted 2 Super Bowls. We've college football national championship. We got another one of those coming up. We have hockey Stanley Cups. I mean, like, who would have thought Florida would have that? I was just in Miami helping. They're building a big new soccer stadium. They have Messi down there. We're helping with some of the arteries, the roads to kind of go into that. So there's a lot going on in our state, and hopefully we can get back to where we're competitive in college football.
You bring up a sore subject for my son and Philip, who works for me, is they're both Tampa Bay Lightning fans. And for the life of me, I still can't understand why Florida has 2 ice hockey teams. But when I get emails and see people with Quebec license plates headed down to Florida for the winter, it kind of makes sense now why Florida has these great hockey teams.
So interesting fact. So I grew up in Dunedin, Florida, which is by Clearwater. It's west of Tampa. There in the Pinellas County on the peninsula. We were the spring training home of the Toronto Blue Jays. And one, it was just good because the city of Dunedin owned all those facilities. So as a high school baseball player, my home field was the Dunedin Blue Jays spring training stadium. That's where we practiced, that's where we played. And so I played 4 years Division I baseball all over the country, never played on a better field than my high school home stadium, which is really cool to be able to grow up. But I remember growing up as a kid, every February, you're out and about in Dunedin, and it was 50-50 whether the car in front of you would be a Florida license plate or an Ontario license plate. I mean, it was a lot of Canadians.
So we've got someone here from Canada, and he said in his email, leaving a question, that he's one of the people who drives every year in winters in Florida, lives in Halifax apparently, is there for the summer, and he just wanted to ask his favorite American governor his opinion on his least favorite Canadian Prime Minister, Trudeau.
So all I can say is this. Justin Trudeau, since he has been Prime Minister of Canada, number of Stanley Cups for Canada, 0. Governor Ron DeSantis, number of Stanley Cups for the state of Florida since I've been governor, 3. Who's winning that battle?
Well played. So, on a serious note, you guys, Georgia, now the Carolinas, Virginia, have had to deal with Debbie. How has the recovery been for the state?
Well, you know, we're proud of our storm response in Florida because, you know, when I became governor, this is something we've dealt with for many years. And I said, okay, and there have been a lot of strides made, you know, particularly under Governor Bush, who had to deal with a lot. But I was like, okay, what can we do better? And so every time we get in these seasons, we're looking to do better. So my first thing as governor was like, you know, we can't have situations where people are without power for weeks on end if we can help it. Now, sometimes the damage may be so bad, right? So we started pre-positioning linemen to be able to go. As soon as that storm passes, these guys are there connecting people. So Debbie hit the other day. The number of people without power in the state of Florida is effectively 0 as we sit here today. And that wasn't true in some of these other places that have been hit. Not that this was a Category 5, but being able to do that. So we were able to do that. Now there's some pockets of flooding. We may see some more because when Georgia gets a lot of rain in the south, it comes down in North Florida. So we're monitoring that, but we've been able to really lean in and have a very robust response. It's just something that we take a lot of pride in. We mobilized everyone the week before the storm, before it was even an organized storm, because we see, hey, there's a possibility. We do it. I'd rather have too many resources ready and get a better outcome than not have enough and end up getting a worse outcome. So we're going to do fine on it. Look, I don't want to have to get hit, but if I had to get hit with a Debbie every year, we can handle that. I mean, we're in really good shape. We'll see what happens for the rest of the hurricane season, but the Ian was a Category 5. We had over 3 million people restored with power within 72 hours. Like, that had never happened, anything like that before. We had entire bridges that were knocked out, taking you from mainland Lee County, Fort Myers, to some of these barrier islands, Sanibel and Pine Island. And, these are not state bridges, and so this is like a county deal, and they were basically being told, the residents and the people that had businesses, it's probably going to be 6 months before you're going to be able to get out there. Maybe you can take a boat or something like that. So these guys came to me. They're like, we can't do that. Like, our islands will die. Can you help us? And I'm like, all right, I'll help you. So I got my guys together. I was like, I want no bureaucracy. I want no red tape. We have these missions. We got to do it. So the Pine Island Bridge that they said was going to be out for months, we took it over. 3 days later, it was back open, reconstructed for business. Sanibel, 2 weeks after we took it over, it had 3 breaks in the causeway, repaired, back open for business, and that basically is the difference between those places being able to come back or basically just withering on the vine. So these things are always, there's always something different about each one of them, but preparation is key, and then just being able to make decisions. I mean, like, some people are like so worried that they may make the wrong decision. When you're in this fog of a crisis, you may not make every great decision, but you got to just be decisive. You can always be able to shift resources or do what you need to do. So I think we're going to be fine, and we'll see what happens for the rest of the hurricane season.
Before I get into your thoughts on national politics, I really want to ask you this question. I've been thinking about how to ask you oftentimes questions in interviews you may not necessarily get. One of the things that always strikes me when I go to Florida, take the kids down there, you've got these enormous freshwater springs that come up everywhere. You've got the Everglades. You've got this tremendous environmentalism that Republicans often get knocked as mythology, that we're somehow bad for the environment. But you, as a conservative governor who supports free markets, have really done a good job of balancing business, commerce, trade, tourism, and also no degradation of the environment in Florida. How do you balance those concerns from a conservative perspective to ensure the environment in Florida is pristine, environmentalists love what's going on there, but also you're not sacrificing trade and industry, commerce, and tourism?
Well, fortunately in Florida, a lot of that's reinforcing, right? I mean, like, our economy is strong because we have great natural resources. We're the #1 boating state in the country, #1 fishing state in the country, and it's not even close. And people come for that. They come from all over the country. Heck, they come from all over the world to be able to do that in the state of Florida. And so our Everglades it's not a swamp. It's actually a river. It's a river of grass. And man created different types of blockages of the water for coming down for a variety of different reasons, but it over many decades starved that system of the water it needs, which is a natural filtration system. It's caused water to go in different directions that have caused problems. And so we basically set out when I became governor to restore the flow, to think about what God gave us and get back to that, and do it in a smart, cost-efficient, and an intelligent way. But that has helped our economy for what we're doing. If you look in like Florida Bay, the fishing is better today than it was when I became governor. You look at what we've been able to do to combat algae and some of the things. We've mitigated that to where things like red tide happen. That's just natural, but mitigating the effects. So that's good for the hotels. It's good for our travel industry. It's good for our restaurants. It's good for all of that. So I just had to lay the marker down. Our party really wasn't leaning in on it because I think they think, and I agree with some, I mean, like, when you hear things about environment, you think, hey, the left uses that to try to advance their agenda. They don't really care about the environment. They care about controlling your behavior. So I think there's a natural aversion when you see that, but that's not what we're doing. I'm not trying to control your behavior. I'm trying to restore the beauty of Florida, and we are doing it, but then let you enjoy it as a Floridian or as a tourist. I want more activity. I want people out and about. I want them doing that. So it's a different approach, and I think the left has given us an opening because their whole thing about the climate ideology, That's basically, they want to impose very controlling, destructive policies on the American people. They tell you the world's going to end unless you adopt their entire political agenda. Gee, imagine how convenient that it just works out that way, right? You got to do everything they want, otherwise the world's going to end. So we've rejected that. In fact, we did an energy bill. Oh, the media got so mad at this. We did an energy bill this year that basically said the state of Florida, our energy policy is we want reliable energy and affordable energy. And we specifically said our policy should not be based on climate ideology. That causes people to pay more and it's less reliable. They got so mad about that. But if you think about it, part of the reason we're able to get the power on in Florida after a storm is because we've embraced reliable energy. And even though we've done that, our emissions are way down over the last 10, 20 years than what they were previously. So we're going about all this, I think, in a very sensible way. And that's part of the reason why we've gotten so much broad support in the state of Florida. All the different issues we face, we're addressing every one. We're just doing it from a conservative perspective rather than adopting liberal policies.
So you mentioned the left wanting to control us. There's this governor you may have heard of from Minnesota who, while you were opening your state for COVID, was keeping his lockdown and also doing a rat line for neighbors to rat each other out. And I understand there are a lot of Floridians now who have Minnesota accents.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I've known about Walz a long time because when people flee, they would tell me why they fled. They come up to me. I'd have strangers just give me like a big hug saying, thank you. We escaped from California, New York, but a lot of them escaped from Minnesota, and Minnesota has lost population since he's been governor. And so I think the policies have been very destructive when you're driving out people. But think about this shtick he's doing. I mean, this is just unbelievable. He will give this stump speech, and he says, our neighbors can do what they want. It's none of your damn business what your neighbor's doing. This from the guy that set up a COVID snitch line imploring Minnesotans to tattletale on their neighbors for leaving their house. What, to take the dog, to relieve the dog, walk the dog, or go out and shoot hoops or something? He wanted you reported to the authorities. That is not minding your own damn business. That is a total abuse of government power. And then he'll say things like, well, these Republicans are weird. This is a guy that used Minnesota tax dollars to put tampons in the boys' bathrooms throughout the schools in Minnesota. Are you kidding me? And then he talks about trying to say, he's like, I want people to be able to, they make your own healthcare decisions. Fine, yeah, I agree. But he's the one that mandated the experimental COVID mRNA shot. There was a lot of people that didn't want that, and he forced that on the state employees. And so this whole shtick is totally contradicted by the record. Now the media, they are going to present him as, oh, he's a coach, he's a veteran, all this. That's what they're going to do. They're not going to talk about these policies. And it's interesting, even when they have to address it. So this knock on him for putting the tampons in the boys' locker room, how the media is portraying that is Republicans criticizing Walz for putting tampons in schools. They're omitting why we're so upset, why we think it's ridiculous, because he's putting it in the boys' bathroom. So they don't want to address the actual criticisms of it. I don't think ultimately these VPs probably, are going to affect the election, but how he's being presented versus the actual record, I mean, it's a stark contrast. And I've got people in Florida that live to tell the tales about what happened in the state of Minnesota. And it's interesting because you have some states in that same region, like Iowa's gaining population. They're doing very well. Minnesota's losing population. They're struggling. And it's all just a difference of philosophy and difference of policy. And that's a very stark contrast between those two states.
So you experienced this on the campaign trail in 23 and 24, and it really has been remarkable how a press corps that put Joe Biden in a bubble wouldn't attack anyone who stated the obvious until they couldn't. Now doing this with Kamala Harris, there are so many conservative activists I talk to who says, well, we can't win. They're so out to get us. And yet, look at you in the state of Florida, Republicans able to win. What do you tell conservatives who just feel like the deck is so stacked against us, we can't win?
Well, first of all, the deck is stacked. I don't whine about that. That's just the truth. We had Biden, and I've been dealing with Biden the whole time he's in. You know, we have natural disasters. He's come to Florida. I've seen the decline. I saw him when he first took office 6 months in. He came down when we had a condo collapse in Florida. This was obvious. And yet, a day before that debate in June, if you had said Biden doesn't have the wits or the sanity to be president, forget about even now, but till he's 86, the corporate media in this country would have said you're a conspiracy theorist, that this is right-wing propaganda. Then he went on stage, and it was basically at that point, you ain't putting lipstick on that pig. Everyone knew he couldn't do it, right? And so then they had to say, okay, how are we going to do it? And so they basically worked to get him out of the race. And I've been predicting this for a long time. I thought actually the move to get him out was going to happen after the midterms, but I think what happened is there wasn't a red wave. And so he was able to say, wait a minute, I can beat these Republicans. There's no red wave. Inflation was 8%, border wide open, all the bad things we're talking about, and there was no red wave. But then when it got to the point here, he was going to lose, and so they did it. And so now, and I said this too, whoever they get, and Kamala is probably the best one for us. I mean, if I had to pick who to run against, I would rather them do her than some others, because I think some of the others would be stronger candidates. But they are manufacturing this candidacy out of whole cloth. They are trying to create this excitement. And look, the thing is sometimes that can create excitement. Sometimes it can create momentum. And so this is all manufactured. There's no there with Kamala. She doesn't answer questions for good reasons, because she'll talk about the passage of time and being unburned. I mean, it's just nonsense. So that's it. But here's in Florida, no governor in this country faced more incoming than me from the corporate media. Not even close. And your governor's been hit, others, but it was relentless on me because one. I beat their rising superstar, Gillum, in 2018. They were very upset about that. And then two, I got in after winning a narrow race, and I said, you know what, I'm not trimming my sails. I'm going to go, and I'm going to be bold, and we're going to really move this state. And then when COVID happened, they were so mad people were on the beaches. They said we were killing kids by mandating that schools be open for in-person instruction. All the way down the line, that was constant. And then we stood for re-election after having more incoming. And not only did we win re-election, we took a state that had traditionally delivered 1-point victories. Rick Scott's 2 governor's races, Obama winning the presidential in 2012, Donald Trump in 2016, and me in 2018, even less than 1%. And we won it by 20 points, 1.5 million votes. No one thought that was possible in Florida. When I got elected, we had 300,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in Florida, and Florida had never had more R's than D's. By the time I got reelected, we had flipped that to 300,000 more R's than D's in the state of Florida, which is great, and that generated a 1.5 million vote margin because we won independents overwhelming, all these demographics. But just since my reelection, we've gone from 300,000 more registered R's than D's to now 1 million more registered R's than D's in the state of Florida. And that is in the teeth of 99% hostile media, denigrating Florida, attacking me, but also the state. And people, in the dark days of COVID, we were being pilloried, and yet people were coming. So what that tells me is that there is a desire for truth. It's not easy. There's a lot of static out there. But people do want to see the truth. And so we showed how it's done. Now, for the balance of this national campaign, they are going to act as an arm of the Harris-Walz campaign. That's what's going to happen. Look, the corporate media, it's a huge part of the Democratic Party. That's just what it is. And it's interesting because I think about how do you combat it. As a governor was a little easier because I can just go out and do things. And so people would see with their own eyes, well, hey, wait a minute, this guy saved my job. He did that. It's harder just as being a candidate. But I think to myself, the corporate press in this country has never had a lower approval rating amongst Americans than they do now. We have a fragmented media environment where you don't even need to deal with these people. You can get your news other places. And yet, even though the estimation of them is at rock bottom, even though there's so many other outlets, in some respects, these narratives are more powerful today than there ever have been. I think part of it is it's a little bit harder to counter. If they were doing narratives against Reagan in '84, there were like 5 television stations he could put ads, Morning in America, and just fight back. Well, now it's harder to reach people. And so the stuff that gets into the zeitgeist gets there. So it's not easy to do, but ultimately I think if you're standing for what's right, if you're standing for what's true, if you're making the case, there is a desire for truth out there. And this is a great test because they are taking somebody who nobody thought could do the job of president, and they're trying to create a cultural phenomenon around this candidate and around her running mate. And I think the American people are ultimately going to see through that. But make no mistake, I hear some of the Republicans whining about, oh, they don't go after her. Oh, they're not going to do that. Like, just understand, they are not going to do that. They wanted Biden out, not because they didn't like Democrats, it's because they didn't think he could win. So they're now trying to engineer a victory. That's what they want to do. So just be prepared about doing that and go out and fight the good fight.
Last question for you. You've got small kids. You're in your second term in Florida. You see the lay of the landscape. What gives you hope about the country, your state, where we're headed?
Well, if you look at kind of the maladies around this country that we face, I mean, to me, it's all rooted in leftist ideology and the leftist agenda. And we've seen them overtake K-12 education with school unions. We've seen them overtake the bureaucracy, federal bureaucracy. We've seen them overtake even a lot of corporate America, all these different things. And it's almost like, if you're an American that just believes in those core American values, that these are timeless principles and enduring truths, it's like, where do you turn because you have all this? Well, Florida shows not only did we fight these people, we beat them on issue after issue. We beat the teachers' unions when it came to being open during COVID, for having universal school choice, and we even have paycheck protection for teacher union dues. They no more automatic deduction, and now you're in a situation where Miami-Dade teacher union doesn't have enough signing up, and they're going to be decertified. We beat Fauci and the bureaucrats on COVID. Yes, we beat Disney on woke agenda in schools and woke ideology, and we're proud to do that. We've taken all the debt Florida has had from 1840s to the present. When I became governor, we've paid off 36% of it in just 5.5 years, and we have the lowest per capita debt in the entire country. So all these battles can be won. We've shown it can be won. When I was standing for election the first time in 2018, people were saying Florida was about to become a blue state permanently, and that there's no way Republicans could win elections nationally because of that. Now, I turn on in 2020, I'm like putting things on for my kids, and I could not put on any cartoon without there being a Biden ad. Like, it was nonstop. Now in Florida, you don't have presidential campaign ads. I mean, some of the ones that may be bought nationally on cable, but like in terms of our local markets, Florida's off the board. So we showed it can be done. And I think it can be done throughout the United States. But as conservative people say, what does it mean to be a conservative? And I kind of think about it because, like, on the one hand, I don't want to conserve the current state of things where we have woke corporations, indoctrinations in the schools, prosecutors letting criminals out of jail, all that. So I think what I think Florida represents and what we could do nationally is a great rediscovery where we're restoring the timeless truths that have made this country great. Because when we show fidelity to those founding principles, you got to apply it differently than James Madison did or Lincoln or Reagan to new circumstances. But when we have fidelity to those founding principles, we do well as a country. These are not just timepieces. These are things that endure. We've lost that over recent years, but I absolutely think we've got a pathway to be able to get it back.
Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Are you doing just another one, or do you want me to talk to folks down there? Are you taking a break?
Yeah, we've got Mike Pence right now.
Yep.